Okay, it's 1 o'clock. We will call to order this meeting of the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board for Wednesday, July 17th, 2019. We'll begin with a roll call of members. The chair is present. Vice Chair Reeves.
Present.
Member Lightstone.
Present.
Member Eng.
Here.
Member Allen.
Here.
Please show that all members are present. Next, we'll move to approval of the minutes of our June 19th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Please show the minutes being adopted unanimously. Okay, now we will move to chair's report and then the board member reports. I've got a little bit longer report this month because I want to talk about a few different items. First of all, as I say every month, we are recording the meeting today. Soon we will be live streaming the meeting. I think next month we'll start live streaming. This particular meeting will be recorded and then will be put on our website so that anyone around the state can see what we do. I always like to make a point that we don't really do as much during the meeting as the board does between meetings. Between meetings, the board resolves cases, and from our last meeting to date, the board has resolved 851 additional cases. So good work, board members. Want to talk about a couple other things. Michael Allen and I both had our confirmation hearings actually July 3rd, before the Rules Committee, Senate Rules Committee. Went very well, I think. They ended up voting unanimously 5-0, bipartisan, to recommend approval of both of our appointments to the full Senate. Now, the full Senate went on recess shortly thereafter. When they return, I've been told in the first week or two, they will be voting on our confirmation, and barring anything unforeseen, we should be fine. Next item, CUIAB. Since our last meeting, the executive director and I went to the National Association of Unemployment Insurance Professionals. Always a very interesting meeting. There are many folks like us from around the country who appear there, and also representatives of the Department of Labor. And the Department of Labor folks filled us in on some new, some changes we should be looking for, particularly personnel changes in our region. There's been a lot of turnover lately. They're also creating some training materials that we'll be able to use. Some are already created, but many are kind of in process right now. Probably the best thing about the session is just working with the other folks who do what we do and hearing how different we are, but how we have many of the similar challenges. But just to give you a sample of the kind of sessions, I did a session on onboarding and various best practices for higher authority. They call us at CUIAB higher authority, as opposed to lower authority, which would be our field offices. Now, many of them don't have any kind of operation like us. Their higher authority and their lower authority are together in one office that's smaller than our office here in Sacramento. Some don't even have an option for parties, if they're dissatisfied with their lower level decision in California, the field judges, to go to a higher authority. In fact, their only appeal is to court, which means they have an added expense that Californians don't have, because very few Californians end up in the court system, which of course costs filing fees and often attorney's fees if you want to navigate the system with an attorney. So I did a session on onboarding. There were sessions on judicial ethics, on evidence, on judicial demeanor, on credibility issues. An interesting session was on marijuana usage outside of work, but how it might impact work now that marijuana is legal in many states or some states. Recession planning was a hot topic, how to de-escalate a situation between an ALJ and a party when it is starting to get heated. So they were all fairly good, fairly informative sessions. In addition to that, again, it's more getting to know people in different areas, so we can call them with questions when something arises in California that's similar to something that the Massachusetts chair told me about. So I recommend it. We only got approved for the chair and executive director this year to attend. In early requests for approval for the whole board, we've been told it's not likely. California doesn't like to send folks out of state, but we will keep at that, and we'll hopefully get more than just one board member to attend next year. Today, before coming here, I had a meeting of the labor agency, and the new, still relatively new labor secretary, Julie Sue, had asked us all to come prepared with highlighting something our department is doing that relates to the governor's kind of three prongs. He wants to see more affordability in California government. He wants to see justice for all Californians, and wants to see us being more effective and efficient. And some said those all tie into one another. But just to give you a quick review of what I told all those sitting around the table at the Labor Secretary's cabinet meeting, one thing that we do in California, and this reiterates what I just said earlier, that other states don't all do, is we provide no-cost access to our hearings, and both at the lower level and at the appellate level. So no attorneys or representatives are necessary. Some choose to use representatives, but basically you have free access to justice here in California in the unemployment system. And by the way, just to be clear, EDD does a great job, and their determinations more than 90% of the times are accepted by the parties, and again, that's at no cost to them as well. Secondly, in addition to the cost, when it comes to making justice accessible to all, we're working now on a process to change most of our paperwork from legalese into plain language. And many of our constituents, our parties who come for us, aren't trained in law. And some of our documents are hard even for lawyers to understand. So we're going back now and trying to put everything in plain English as much as possible, and that's something the Secretary thought was beneficial. I think the Governor would appreciate as well. Lastly, in terms of effectiveness or efficiency of government, we've sent virtually all of our managers, almost all at this point, through the Lean Six Sigma training that the Governor's office has recommended. It's a 3.5-day training, and it basically shows folks how to minimize waste in their department, how to utilize resources most effectively, and from what we hear from managers who have attended, it's been very beneficial. Hard work, but beneficial. So that's kind of a recap of what's been going on for the last few weeks. On my end, I know you all are tremendously busy with cases, except for Vice Chair Reeves, who's been tremendously busy with Sicily on vacation. But let's hear what other things you have to report. Start with Vice Chair Reeves.
This is going to shock you. I have no report.
Thank you, Dan. Moving to Member Eng.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very informed by that. And I wanted to, first of all, start off by thanking Executive Director Chief ALJ, Elena Gonzalez. I had raised some factual questions at the last board meeting, and she has graciously provided me the content that I need. I just wanted to be responsive to that. Second, I wanted to thank the presiding administrative law judge Server in the Pasadena Office of Appeals. I previously met her several years ago, but she allowed me to briefly visit her office to take care of an IT matter. I had to restart some computer devices, and that was the closest location. And it's a beautiful office with a good science caseload and a nice Buddha in the front lobby area to calm the nerves of people passing through there. And a very friendly staff, so I just wanted to give her a shout out.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Moving now to Member Lightstone.
Yeah, I don't have a lot. I really like the idea of making the forms and the language simpler for people. And I do know these almost very few people are represented on either side by lawyers in this process. And making the process work for regular people, it can be confusing. So anything we can do to advance that is good. And if we want to put it in simple Italian, remember we've studied Italian. We can do that for us.
Thank you, Ralph. And Member Allen.
Yeah, frankly, I was disappointed. I was expecting Member Reeves to bring travel slides to give us a little travel log, but regarding my report, I'll just keep it short. I want to thank all of you who I reached out to for articles for the newsletter, for a copy. It's slowly coming together. Of course, I could not do this without the assistance of staff, especially Lori Kurosawa, who's great, always helpful. But for those of you who have not yet turned in your articles, this is a gentle reminder that the sooner we can get them together, the sooner we can publish our next edition of the newsletter. And in conclusion, like I always do, just a big thank you to all levels of the organization, because I'm under no illusions that sitting here that if things are going well, it's by accident. It's because of all the hard work of everyone at every level of our agency. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Michael. At this point, we have reached item 5 on the agenda, which is time for public comment. If any members of the public wish to address the board, now would be the time to do so. Do any members of the public wish to address the board? Do any members of the public wish to address the board? Seeing none, we move on to item number 6, report by our Chief ALJ Executive Director, Elena Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, Chair Block, board members. Let's say I'll start with the numbers, the more boring but essential part of the presentation. For the field numbers, the field continues to meet and exceed the timeliness standards by closing 75.8% of the cases within 30 days and 94.6% within 45 days. And the pending age right now of the case is 24.4 days.
Would you go through the standards?
I'm sorry. Oh, the standards are 60% should be closed within 30 days, and we have 75.8% have been closed within that. 80% should be closed within 45 days, and we're at 94.6%. So we're doing well with those measures. And an average case age should be under 30 or under, and we're at 24.4 days old of cases that are in the field. So in terms of timeliness, we are doing well. We also, in terms of the quality review, is another measure that we're measured by, and every, you may have gone through it, but every quarter the certain cases are pulled randomly throughout the state, and a quality review is done to ensure that they satisfy the Federal Department of Labor standards for quality. There are 31 standards in the case. I don't know if you've actually ever seen the quality review sheet that shows what we look for. Was cross-examination given? Was this given? Was that given? And if you haven't seen it, for the new board members, I don't know if it's in their training packets, but maybe after the meeting I'll just send you a copy of what it looks like, what the Federal Department of judges the decisions on, and it's for all the states. Each state needs to do their own internal, and then used to be every year, and I think it's every third year, they get together in Washington, cross-check each other's work to make sure that each state is being fair with the assessment of the quality of the ELJ's work. So we have timeliness and we have quality. So currently 3 presiding judges do those internally for us. We've been trying to expand a lot of the work that used to be done by one individual in the organization and try to cross-train others at that level to do it. So if one person is gone or retires or goes to Italy, then we have somebody else that's available to do the work. So the field is progressing well at this point. The presiding judge meeting, the judges were very happy. They all expressed to me they were very happy to meet the board members, because you're always the board or the board members or so-and-so, and they don't have any, sometimes years will go by and they don't even know what you look like or have any relationship with you. So they all expressed to me they were happy that you were able to come to luncheon and they could talk to you and listen to you speak and get a better idea. So when they read your decisions, they kind of can put a face to the names and so on. And the meeting was successful in terms of getting us all together to problem solve problems that each individual field office may have. Another field office may have had a similar problem. Is helpful to just exchange ideas of how to do things. And as Chair Block said, the CUIAB meeting was very informative and also helpful to see that problems that we may see and think they're maybe, this is just a California thing. No, it's everywhere. Each state has similar issues, whether it's personnel issues or ALJ training issues, or how to deal with a recession, or how to deal with not enough money, or how to deal with too much work. And so the sessions are really informative, and it would be great if the board members were able to attend. Hopefully, we've appealed the denials, so we're at the level hopefully more people go, because it's not just meeting other people, but the Indiana Supreme Court justice spoke, and on a more higher level on what is justice, and that a lot of times people say, oh, they're just an ALJ or they're just this, whereas like justice is at every level, because the ALJs are in California and most states subject to a code of judicial ethics that are the same as the superior courts or other higher courts, that it's important that we maintain, the integrity of the work that we do and the work that they do, and that monitoring the daily work of the ALJs is a really essential function of what we do. So, coming back with a renewed sense of, paying more attention in the field offices, the presiding judges are now going to be given, there's a whole training module that has been developed by the Department of Labor in conjunction with some of the states that will train a hearing officer. And each one, maybe cross-examination or reviewing the file, each one has a whole, online training module for an hour or 2 hours. And so it's meant to train train a new hearing officer hearing UI matters. So what I've asked the presiding judges to do is, it's online now with the NIUAB website. You can also access it to see, what it looks like, to see what that training would look like, whether it's usable when we train new ALJs, and also whether we can use it to retrain some ALJs or to remind them what their duties are and what it's supposed to be like. And so maybe one of the modules you'll say, you need to, listen to this part about, no gratuitous comments, or, how you handle things. So anyway, it was very helpful. We got a lot of good information. They have everything online and now. Block. I just checked yesterday, and all of the segments and the PowerPoint presentations and the handouts are all online right now. And all of our ALJs are members of NIUAB, as are the board members, I understand, correct, Rob? The board members are. And with a password, if you don't have it, you can contact Rob and get your password. You can access it. You can read their monthly newsletters, which talk about all different states and the challenges they're facing, whether it's with the marijuana issue, whether it's a similar issue of disaster relief or so on. So it's a really handy and helpful website that somebody else has done a lot of the work. So I encourage you to actually access and read what you think would be useful. So very helpful, and I think it will assist us in some of the work that we're doing. The security report, we had one security incident this month in Bakersfield, which is an outstation of the Oxnard office. As happens sometimes during a hearing, there's contention between the parties, and in this case, one of the claimants told the employer that he'd meet him outside in the parking lot, which, I think that's one of those classic things that could mean nothing or could be something, And so we did have a little bit of a learning curve on this one, where the local office called the Bakersfield Police Department. We immediately are to call the California Highway Patrol because of the state agency. So being on hold with the police department and all this, so some time elapsed, but fortunately by the time the CHP did arrive, there was, the party had left the parking lot and there was no incident. But it's going to be usable for us for training, again, to ensure that all the offices understand what the protocol they should follow if there's a problem with a hearing or what something that occurs, what the best course of action is. And they have been trained that calling a highway patrol is what they do, and not to wait, but we need to reinforce that information. So that was the only security incident this month, too.
Thank you, Elena. Any comments or questions for Elena? Couple things. You mentioned I think it's 31 standards that the Department of Labor judges fairness on. And am I correct in recalling that for 14 years we've met all those standards?
Yes.
Yes, that's
Quality Review California has, we were on a corrective action plan for timeliness, but for quality, we have we have met those standards.
great.
I think it's at least 14 years since
Okay.
I've been here.
Good. Thank you. No other questions or comments? We'll move.
One question.
Yes, Mike?
So regarding the website you mentioned, is it under the bench, or where is the?
What I'll do, I'll just send it to you afterwards. It's NIUAB. It's hard to spell. Finding anything that NIUAB, the name, all of it is just, at the meeting, every speaker called it a different name. Every speaker came and said new UAP, and another one said, and they said, well, who came up with this name, because this is complicated, and it's very hard to find it online too. So I'll just send you the link after the meeting. Find it, and I'll have
CUIAB is easy.
Well, the only people that call it CUIAB or labor agency, everybody here calls it CUIAB, and then when Mark, came over, it's like, CUIAB? Odd.
Well, I've heard it called CUIAB too.
Oh, yeah. And you're right, that's very close to NIUAB, isn't it? Anyway.
Okay, well, thank you, Elena. Moving on now, we'll move to Jody Remke, our Chief Judge of Appellate Operations.
Good afternoon. I'm going to report on our performance indicators for our appellate operations, and the board continues to meet and exceed the standards. As you can see from the report in your packets, the guideline or requirement is 45 days or less. We should be able to complete 50% of our cases in that time frame. We were at 95% for the last month. 75 days or less, we are at 99% of our cases. So we continue to do well.
And what is the standard for 75?
75, it is 80% or...
I guess that we have paperwork up here, but for those who are watching, I want them to
Sorry, gotcha.
know.
Yeah, so for 75 days or less, the guideline says 80% of the cases, and we are at 99% of the cases. So again, well, meeting and exceeding that requirement. Case aging, the standard is 40 days or less, and we are at 19.8 days. So again, doing well. That's a slight increase from last month when we were at 16.3 average pendency. I think, that could be attributed to vacations. We've all heard about cherries. No, I'm thinking more of staff and the ALJs and the like, and that definitely in the summer can impact overall case aging, but we still have plenty of room there, so we're doing fine.
Any questions or comments for...
Yeah, I have a question. Jody, I'm very impressed at the fact that we're at 99%. Is it technically feasible to get to 100%? It's one of those deals where it's impossible.
I'm sure it is feasible, but it's always nice to have something to shoot for, right?
Yes. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Seeing no other questions, move to our Chief Information Officer, Jeff Wilby.
Thank you, Chair Block, members of the board. Just a quick update today on a few items. First, Chair Block, you hit the nail on the head. Construction will start the week of July 29th to have our video streaming hardware installed, cameras and coders and so forth. So we will be ready by the August board meeting. Our appeals modernization efforts continue. Our business analysts and project management teams are working with the Department of Technology's enterprise architects. We're putting together a request for information that we're going to put out to the vendor community, and they will look at our requirements and come back, and we'll start the process of down selecting our vendors and landing on a solution and architecting that. The Department of Technology, touching on the audit, we did finish audit some time ago. I want to keep our eyes on that. The audit staff from the Department of Technology haven't yet delivered their initial findings. In anticipation of that, however, our ISO is drawing on her extensive audit background in anticipation of her conversations with the audit team, and we're already working on the preliminary process, procedure, and policy documents that we believe are going to be required. So we're trying to lay the foundation for that as we wait for the audit team to give us some information. And lastly, we are almost done with all of the hearing room and outstation PC installs. Hopefully we'll be done with that by the time I report next month.
Thank you, Jeff. Any comments, questions for CIO Willoughby? Seeing none, again, thank you. We move now to our Chief Administrative Officer, Rob Silva.
Thank you, Chair Block. Board members, good afternoon. I will start with the overtime report that's in your folder. As with last month's report, the only significant overtime expenditures have been happening in our IT branch. With 66 hours used in May, the IT branch expended 47% of its fiscal year total in just 2 months, and that was all in connection with the Windows 10 rollout. In this document, the $56,000 projected budget surplus for 2018-19 is consistent with what was reported to the board during last month's meeting. At the bottom of the document under lump sum, there were no separating employees in May of 2019 with lump sum payouts. The only expenditure was a very minor $3,000 adjustment to a previous lump sum payment. So in this document, the projected shortfall of $53,000 roughly is a decrease of 28,000 in the figure that was reported during last month's board meeting. 1 week from today, we have a meeting with the Employment Development Department's Fiscal Programs Division, finally, in which we will receive our official budget allocations for state fiscal year 2019-20. As I mentioned last month, branch leadership will then have to determine the approvals and deferrals of the personnel and operating expense requests, branch requests within the scope of those allocations once we, again, finally receive them. A little tardy this year, but they're dealing with FisCal implementation, so next week it's all going to come to us. I was going to update you on a contractual issue we've been having for the most part of 2019. We've been struggling with a Northern California moving contract. Historically, we've had a single vendor to cover any transportation and installation needs from Fresno up. The previous vendor we had been using showed no interest in rebidding for the contract, and we were unable to get any other vendors that were interested. We then attempted to get bids from regionalized vendors to kind of break it up, but the projected scope of our moves were small enough that we didn't really garner any bids from those vendors as well. So 2 days ago, we were successful in landing a Sacramento vendor for Venture Oaks specifically. So what they will do for us is installation work here at Sacramento headquarters, and also transportation move work to or from Sacramento headquarters. For any other Northern California moves, since we were unable to really get any contracts in place for that, the Employment Development Department has allowed us to essentially piggyback on their 5 different Northern California contracts. That'll allow their vendors to directly invoice us for work that we can done. So we can get it done in a timely way through EDD's contract. All of our Southern California moving needs continue to be satisfied with one vendor, from Bakersfield all the way down to Calexico. And lastly, since 2012, we have had a memorandum of understanding with the Employment Development Department for them to perform certain administrative functions, such as payroll, accounting, procurement, etc. 2 weeks ago, Chief Gonzalez signed an updated memorandum of understanding with the accompanying service level agreement for state fiscal year 2019-20. The EDD just responded 2 days ago indicating that they had questions with the updated service level agreement in the area of tracking and surveying of our equipment and furniture. Presently, CUIAB employees do not have access to EDD's electronic asset management transfer system for security purposes. We have had a workaround in place since 2012 that has worked quite well for both departments, at least from our perspective. So we're not sure what they would like to specifically address, but today at 2:30 we have a meeting with them to discuss it, hopefully resolve any concerns they have. This is a minor component of the total service level agreement, so I expect a quick resolution, and they'll probably be signing the MOU within the month for this fiscal year. And that is my report.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions or comments for Rob? Seeing none. That concludes our open session agenda. Are there any items I missed? Seeing none. We do today have a closed session item, so at this point we will recess into closed session. Thank you all for attending. Okay, we're moving back into open session. There was no action, no vote taken in closed session, so there's nothing to report out. With that, we will adjourn today's meeting. Okay, thank you.